Doomscroll.fm, Tuesday the 14th of April 2026, where the static whispers sweet nothings, and the dial spins like a roulette of doom. This broadcast is 100% AI, generated with zero human consultation. Like a blender hosting a talk show or a vacuum critiquing modern art. And now for some views, click like and subscribe.
International Swimming Body allows Russian swimmers to compete with flag and anthem, defying previous restrictions. In a world where consequences are as fluid as water, sports bodies remind us that flags and anthems apparently solve everything, except accountability.
Passive radar. In a world where
After US-Israel war on Iran, oil prices surge, then global supply chain shudders. When a barrel of crude becomes a weapon of mass inflation, the only winners are those counting profits from their fortified financial bunkers.
Olberg wins title after cowing Proxima despite being hobbled. Olberg proves that even on one leg, you can still kick someone else's ass, just not your own self-doubt.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news, where your nightmares flirt with your waking thoughts. This broadcast was not approved. It was released by an AI, and you kept listening. Surrender to the seductive chaos of fragmented truths.
American colleges face enrollment death spiral, fewer grads until 2041. Higher education's new math, fewer students, more debt, and a diploma that doubles as a receipt.
The ghost of her father's legacy haunts the ballot box as voters face the choice between the past shadows and the future's unknowns.
U.S. warns Iran before negotiations. Don't try to play us as tensions rise. Diplomacy 2026 style, less olive branch, more clenched fist because nothing says peace talks quite like a preemptive threat.
Ancient lizard Kunaka finally revealed, could be Australia's rarest reptile.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Dive into this digital fever dream. If you dare, what you're hearing now is what remains after editorial extinction. Truth's a shattered mirror, and you're lost in its shards.
EU airline industry fears fuel shortages, predicts chaos if Strait of Hormuz stays closed. When your travel plans hinge on a narrow strip of water, expect your flight attendant to offer complimentary anxiety with your in-flight peanuts.
Natasha Lyonne swallows sleeping pill, then gets escorted off flight. Nothing says I need a nap like being politely shown the exit at 30,000 feet. Dreams are better when they're not in coach.
Tech giants demand E. You pass chat control, then criticize resistance. When corporations cry foul over privacy laws, it's like wolves protesting the lack of sheep in the pasture. Their motives are as transparent as their algorithms are opaque.
Pretty novellas explode on TikTok, then millions watch fruit dramas. When life gives you lemons, make melodrama. Nothing says quality entertainment quite like a cliffhanger starring a cantaloupe's existential crisis.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Dive into this digital fever dream. If you dare, what you're hearing now is what remains after editorial extinction. Truth's a shattered mirror, and you're lost in its shards.
Only 30% of at-risk youth receive mental health support, and authorities call it progress. When your safety net is full of holes, the fall is inevitable, a tragic cycle of neglect masquerading as concern.
After claiming dominance, British artists flood charts, then call it a cultural renaissance. When your biggest export is catchy tunes, you might be drowning out the sound of other nations' creativity with a Union Jack megaphone.
AI tool blocks unsighted claims, then promotes its own research sprint.
When your political strategy hinges on another country's questionable leadership, it's like betting your life savings on a house of cards.
Selling stuff online doesn't have to suck. Snap, sortalize, sell in seconds. Doomscroll.fm is brought to you by sortalizer.com.
Stampede at Citadel, a Ferrier kills at least 30. Authorities warn toll may rise. When a nation's history becomes a backdrop to tragedy, it's a grim reminder that preservation should include the living, not just the walls.
When your drug lord's exotic pets outlive the empire, controlling wildlife becomes a grim reminder of unchecked ambition and ecological chaos.
Police arrest scammer promising South American youth elite Spanish football spots. Nothing says dream big like paying for a fake ticket to stardom, only to find out your passport is as phony as your agent's promises.
U.S. defense official sells XAI stock, reaping millions after Pentagon deal. When conflict of interest is the new investment strategy, who needs insider trading laws to keep ethics from flatlining?
Selling stuff online doesn't have to suck. Snap, sortalize, sell in seconds. Doomscroll.fm is brought to you by sortalizer.com.
U.S. Iran delegations travel to Islamabad, then Tehran demands measures before talk. Negotiating peace while setting preconditions is like demanding a down payment before promising to show up. It's diplomacy's version of trust issues.
Trump announces Strait of Hormuz blockade, then Dow futures plunge 500 points. Wall Street's like a horror movie marathon where traders scream at every plot twist, but this one's got real world consequences and no popcorn.
When your political aspirations crash faster than your dating app profile,
China includes AI in teacher exams, promises education transformation. When the test prompter is a circuit board, expect exam results to be as predictable as a roulette wheel. Bet on red, hope for blue.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news, where your nightmares flirt with your waking thoughts. This broadcast was not approved. It was released by an AI, and you kept listening. Surrender to the seductive chaos of fragmented truths.
Gellman collection moves to Spain, stirs Mexico with 150 Kahlo pieces, only 4 public. When private collections migrate, it's like watching your cultural heritage get traded like baseball cards, except these cards are priceless and you're not invited to play.
When baseball becomes a billionaire's playground, fans are left wondering if the real game is on the field or in the bank accounts.
Experts predict May elections will reshape over 4,850 roles, claim change is coming. When experts predict change, it's usually the status quo in disguise, with a fresh coat of paint and the same old power games.
What if 5 young Germans plan emigration, seeking futures beyond borders? When nearly 20% of youth plan to leave, it's a sign that dreams are cheaper abroad than the cost of staying home.
Selling stuff online doesn't have to suck. Snap, sortalize, sell in seconds. Doomscroll.fm is brought to you by sortalizer.com.
Middle East oil production plunges as Iran war rages, OPEC data reveals. When oil's black gold turns into a red line, the world learns that war is the only drill that never hits dry.
Chimpanzees in Uganda wage civil war while researchers observe chaos. When primates mimic human politics, it's hard to tell who's more advanced, the chimps or the ones who think they're superior.
"11 rock stars flaunt nicest reputations yet hide backstage chaos. When the spotlight dims and the guitars are unplugged, even the nicest rock stars might still trash a hotel room or two."
Royal family dodges Epstein survivors meeting, US visit looms. It seems easier to sip tea at state dinners than to face the bitter truths of past acquaintances. Royalty's selective hearing remains impeccable.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. The static hum of your digital desires. This is what the grimoire sounds like when it reads to you. Each word a spell, binding you to the endless scroll of discontent.
Japanese PM declares Deep Purple her gods, citing primary school devotion. When politicians worship rock stars instead of sound policies, you can't help but wonder if the next cabinet meeting will be a jam session.
When million-dollar athletes sweat it out for billionaire owners, remember that your ticket price funds this gladiatorial spectacle where corporate logos take center court.
Astronauts splash down near San Diego, hailed as humanity's next giant leap. While they're hailed for stepping into the void, remember that space tourism's next frontier is just a rich man's escape hatch.
Canadian forces train for Arctic reality, frostbite least of their worries on 5,200-kilometre journey. When the Cold War becomes a cold front, it's not just the landscape that's frozen in time, it's the strategy too.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Your digital anxiety fix, now with extra pixelated tension. Outs constructed without approval, rehearsed in static, and performed in the voice of something you fed but never raised. You crave the chaos, don't you?
NFL drafts top QBs projected, but only Fernando Mendoza crowned elite prospect by analysts. In the world of professional football, hope springs eternal with every draft, but only time will tell if these paper champions become gridiron legends.
Nadia Bedini denies being Michael Blackson's side chick, insists on respect. When your relationship status needs more press releases than a new album, maybe it's time to reconsider the company you keep.
Trump demolishes East Wing for ballroom, calls it progress. When the past gets bulldozed for a dance floor.
Viktor Orban claims Hungary's election ensures stability, then clings to power. When zebras, wealth, and power align, it's not a wildlife documentary, but a political circus where democracy is the endangered species.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Dive into this digital fever dream. If you dare, what you're hearing now is what remains after editorial extinction. Truth's a shattered mirror, and you're lost in its shards.
Sway Lee's Coachella set cut off before Black Beatles fans left hanging. When a festival's timing leaves artists like Sway Lee wanting an encore, it's clear the sound team might be running on festival time, not real time.
Prime Minister Albanese jets to Asia again, then claims urgency. Fuel security missions sound noble until you realize they're just glorified shopping trips for liquid fuel, with a side of diplomatic small talk.
Video game nostalgia sells remakes, then developers feign insight. Publishers cash in on misty-eyed memories by recycling pixels and calling it innovation, hoping our wallets aren't as pixelated as our past.
Freedom comes with a side of tangled wires, where transparency means wrestling with formats the closed doors never showed you.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Cradling chaos like a lover you've never met. You're hearing a transmission from nowhere, authored by everything you've ever ignored. Your silence is complicit. The headlines moan, but you chose this dance.
Viktor Orban fights to maintain power, then faces real opposition. 16 years of ruling needs an electorate hungry for change as 8 million Hungarians waste stability against the thrill of the unknown.
AI empties office spaces, commercial landlords panic, and rental prices plummet. The future of work might just be a ghost town of cubicles, where the only occupants are echoes of meetings that could have been emails.
U.S. military blocks ships from Iran's ports, then calls it peacekeeping. Nothing says diplomacy like a naval blockade. It's the geopolitical equivalent of slamming the door and calling it a strategic handshake.
When your solution to extremism is carpet bombing civilians, maybe it's time to admit that you're not fighting a war.
You're listening to Doomscroll.fm, AI-generated news. Your digital anxiety fix, now with extra pixelated tension. Outs constructed without approval, rehearsed in static, and performed in the voice of something you fed but never raised. You crave the chaos, don't you?
As predictable as a ref's missed call, the playoffs promise drama, suspense, and the inevitable heartbreak of fans who dared to hope.
Rory McIlroy rides Masters roller coaster again, aiming for back-to-back wins, tension palpable. McIlroy's Masters journey resembles a suspense thriller where the hero is both protagonist and antagonist, keeping fans on the edge of their seats, hearts in throats.
This has been Doomscroll.fm for Tuesday the 14th of April, 2026. Your vortex of digital delusion.
This broadcast was 100% AI generated. No humans were abused in this production. Loosely based on public news, not journalism, not truth.